Welcome to Off-Grid Journey on UCY.tv. We have a jam-packed show for you today. I am your host, Drew Lamb. Today we are going to explore wild mountain gardening and extreme homesteading with Penn Parmenter. And then Kirk Mobert of Sundog Builders will join us to teach us about rocket mass heaters. My first guest today is the wonderful and generous Penn Parmenter. And she is with us live right now from the Rocky Mountains in Colorado, where she and her husband Cord and her son Max farm and garden under some very, very extreme conditions. And I heard about them through Murray Hallam. We were corresponding about aquaponics, and I'm planning to have Murray on the show in the upcoming weeks. And Murray suggested that I contact them because I was actually asking Murray about bioregionally adapted seeds and was looking for more information on that. And so he suggested that I contact Penn and Cord to get some information about that, how they deal with that issue, growing crops in such a potentially hostile environment. Penn, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us.
Thanks, Drew. I'm glad to be here.
So you have a website chock full of information called pennandcordsgarden.com. That's Penn and Cord, Cords, garden.com. And you guys have a lot of projects going on. You do classes and consultations, and you construct sustainable greenhouses, and you sell seeds as well. Is that correct?
It's true. It's all one big job that all works integrated together, just like how the garden grows. Everything we do is integrated together, so it just kind of seems natural that, you know, one thing leads to the next, especially seed saving, which has knocked us out of the park, changed our lives.
So you're growing at a very high altitude. You live at over 8,100 feet.
It's true. It's, for mountain folk, and I'm talking about Rocky Mountain folk, 8,000 feet is considered a pretty moderate elevation unless you've moved from sea level, you know. Right. Then you're keeling over, your lips are cracking, your skin's drying out, you're breathing short, you know, that's what happens. But for us mountain folk, 9 and 10 is where it's getting really gnarly, you know. But 8 is still fairly moderate. You're lucky to get 80 to 90 days here, and you know, climate change can vary that one way or the other, but if you get 90 days, boy, you're rocking.
Wow, that's amazing. I'm at 2,000 feet, and I'm in a Mediterranean climate, so we have some challenges. I mean, we have our seasons, definite clear seasons, and it's very difficult to grow tomatoes where I'm at. I didn't realize that until recently, and I was talking to a guy who heads up the Master Gardening program here in Southern Oregon, and he was saying that we don't have a climate that's good for growing tomatoes, but I've seen pictures of incredible tomatoes, like huge tomato harvests on your website.
I know, it's true. Well, the first thing that happened when you arrive in the mountains is they tell you everything you can't do. They tell you can't grow tomatoes, the holy grail of the mountains, the gateway drug to gardening, the thing that makes everyone addicted, you know. And they told us we couldn't grow pumpkins or corn or all of these things. You know, the brokenhearted come in droves to tell you what you cannot do because they came here and they brought with them the way that they gardened wherever they came from or wherever their parents gardened and what they learned from them. And it is the Wild Wild West is not only extreme, but it's extremely dry. We are a semi-arid climate, even up here in the mountains. So they, think they can chuck some seeds as if they're in Wisconsin or something, and it's the dry gravel. The wind blows it away, and the hail pummels it to death. And it's a whole new world, you know?
Yeah, my family came from the Midwest. Well, part of my family did. And my great-great-grandfather was a farmer in Kansas. And eventually he made his way over to Colorado. And he and his son thought they were going to do some farming in Colorado. Mm-hmm. And completely failed. They didn't realize how rocky the soil was. And he was not just a farmer, but he was a blind farmer.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and
wow.
Some incredible stories about Link is that was his nickname, and so he ended up raising horses instead, and he would break and train horses. So
he adapted. He adapted,
but I heard stories from when I was a kid about how difficult it was to farm in Colorado. So,
yeah, especially a farm where if you're thinking about plowing a field or something like that. It's a very different world here. When you're semi-arid, the air is just wicking away all the moisture out of the soil. So you have to figure out ways to contain that soil. You know, Colorado is half desert and half mountains, and the desert is 5,000 feet above sea level. So it's pretty intense. You know, they're high and hot, we're high and cold. You know, so both of those things are somewhat similar, but also basically they're extreme and they're stressing the plants. And, you know, for us, besides putting our head down and figuring out ways to grow tomatoes at 8,000 feet, we only recently in the past 5 or 6 years we went to seed school, which I highly recommend, which you can look up seed school and find them all over the country now. They're traveling. And we blew our minds that this huge part of gardening that we were leaving out, seed saving, that after World War II, Americans didn't have to save seed anymore. We had tons of abundance, nice stores that you can go buy the seed. And we stopped, but other countries didn't stop. And so a place like Siberia, where, you know, their mountains are bigger than ours, meaner than ours, colder than ours, and they don't even have roads, seed saving is the only way to get seed. They have very amazing seed swaps, and everybody shares seed because they have to adapt it to those extreme conditions. And that has been an amazing change for us here. So you started out with seed that would have the greatest chance of surviving in your climate, but the plants will adapt over time. Murray was telling me it takes about 5 generations. You know, that's so interesting. I see the seed begin to adapt the second it's born, and then I see the plants begin to adapt and learn the very first year you grow them here. They're taking in the information. They pass that information through the seed into the next generation. So every year you save that seed, it learns and stores that information, then brings it into the next generation. So 5 years is, you know, that's a generalization, but I see it happen much quicker. Most people think, it's this 40, 50-year thing, like, you know, like it's going to take your lifetime. Well, if you're gardening your whole lifetime anyway, you could really change a variety if you wanted to. But even in the first year, when I saved my tomato seeds, I put all the saved seeds in a flat next to all the store-bought seeds in a flat. And the vigor and the germination rate and the amazing ability of those seeds was, you could see it with your naked eye immediately, how different those tomatoes were coming out of the ground. And I was blown away. But that's the thing. Seed is perfect. It has a self-replicating program in it and an adaptation program. It begins to learn your exact place on the planet immediately and stores the information. So here in Colorado, every year is completely different, and we are wide open to snowing in June and freezing August 1st again if you want. Everything happens. 2012 was the hottest year we've ever seen, and 2013 was the coolest year we've ever seen. And the seed was saved from both of those years. They're storing that accumulative information so that when Colorado delivers another extreme year, it's at least got that information backed up. And so the power you feel saving the seed 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, you just start getting crazy over it because you're wielding the universe, you know. You feel like you're king. It's fantastic.
Right. That is amazing. And I like how you put it in terms of data. You know, so the plant's collecting this data.
That's right.
And passing it along through the seed. It's completely amazing. Now, you and Cord grow in 2 regions, basically, you know, on your property. Is that correct? You have more of a mountaintop garden.
It's true. My garden is up on the decomposed granite and in the trees. The trees protect the garden so much, and we have way too much sun in Colorado to be able to handle 12 hours of sun. We can use up to 5, and that's equal to 12 somewhere else. So dappled light, full shade, half shade. I can grow in all of that. Plus the trees catch the frost, they catch the hail, they mess up the wind a little bit, and they help. And so I'm digging on the rock and going up with my raised beds, using all native soil and native materials, our sand, our horse manure, and our native soil. All native soil can be turned into something better. So I'm always encouraging people to work with the soil they have, and adding organic matter. That's what's going to get the job done. The Cords Garden is at the bottom of the mountain, and that's where all the soil is. These are very ancient mountains, and so when you look at geography, right, the rock stays up at the top and all the soil washed down to the bottomland. So you really should inspect your property anywhere you live, that you could have deposits of soil, sand, other materials that you may not have thought right away because you just turn the shovel in one spot. We go down there to the bottomland, and we have this incredible topsoil, this loamy, rich, mineral-rich mountain soil. And that's another thing. Colorado and all the West gets a bad rap for its soil. But this is mineral-rich mountain soil that's trapped in valleys. And so it doesn't go anywhere. And it's very wonderful stuff to start with. And, of course, we lack organic matter here in the West. So we add organic matter, lots of it, and start making killer soil. So down at the bottom, we do biointensive, where we are growing much more food in less space with less water. We have water issues here in Colorado. And up on the rock, we're growing in raised beds, either wooden or rock, and on top of the rock, which gives you good drainage, certainly. And I have no ground animals in the top garden. And, of course, we're deer fenced, and we should be elk fenced. But we're lucky. We're not lucky. The elk have changed their migration pattern, so we don't have them anymore. But 8 feet for deer, 10 feet for elk, or elk will attempt 8. They are flying horses. Wow. That's what they are. Wow. And they're heavy, 800 pounds on the hoof. When they go in your garden, it's going down, okay? They're going to drill holes in it.
I have problems with these pesky tree rats in the garden. And they usually live on acorns. There's a lot of oak trees on the hill where I live. And they'll eat those, but they just get into everything, and they'll tunnel into my greenhouse, and they'll get into my aquaponics system that's out on my patio, and let's see, this week they ate my spinach seeds, and they ate my chard seeds that I just planted in my aquaponic troughs. So I'm going to have to screen those off, set some more traps. I think I need to get some cats.
Yeah, cats are very good. Definitely plant some catnip, though. Keep your cat happy, and then she'll bite the tiny heads off of those critters for sure.
Yeah. It's really a problem. It's bad enough dealing with the bugs. Do you have a lot of insect problems?
Well, the higher you go in elevation, the less those problems are. But of course, we still do. The fierce bugs are fierce. We get flea beetles in the spring, and what do? You replant your kale and your arugula, or you wait a couple of weeks and plant it later after the big infestation comes, or you plant them a nice little trap crop and let them have it, and then plant again. And by the time that second crop's up, the things they love, the brassicas, the Chinese cabbage, all that stuff we plant early, and they come early. Mm-hmm. So you learn to sort of mix it up so that they move on sooner than later. Right. We get of course in the greenhouses, all bugs can cycle through our greenhouses, but I fear no bug. I fear no disease. I got a shop vac and a power hose, man. Good go.
Yeah, that's a really good idea, actually.
The shop vac will set them back on their heels.
Yes, it will. That is a really super good idea. Now, what other adaptations have you had to make? You said that you use less water than traditional farming. What kind of adaptations have you made to conserve water?
Well, that I would directly say, for one thing, we hand water. That's for a reason that's kind of dumb. We don't even have a water system. We just hand water. But hand watering allows you to water what needs to be watered and not water everything else, the same. Certainly perennials and other things don't need the same water. And all the vegetables need different water, too. So you can hand decide that and be very close with your plants then to know what's going on because you have to water them every day or every other day. But biointensive gardening, without a doubt, and this is the work of John Jevons, who wrote the book How to Grow More Vegetables. He's been around for over 35 years, saving the world, teaching people how to improve soil in places where there's only sand and they carry water on their heads, and creates a bed that they keep improving, that keeps cranking out the food with the least amount of water possible. And it's the way you develop the bed and prepare it. It holds water. He calls them living sponges. And here in the West, we have to cap them off. We have to mulch everything because the air is so dry that it's just wicking away the soil. So combining biointensive and good old-fashioned mulching, we have some serious water-holding beds that crank out the vegetables. And also, we are equidistantly spacing, which is a part of biointensive growing. So there's no rows and there's no wasted areas wicking away moisture, and we never step on our beds and never compact soil. So the plants become their own living mulch because they're equidistantly spaced. When they're mature, they should all be touching, creating their own canopy, and then you have less weed problems, they hold the moisture in better, and you're getting 4 times the yield out of a row-planted bed. Because row planting is for farmers and tractors and horses and machinery. But for the home garden, row planting is you're wasting over half your space and compacting it and wicking away your moisture. So it's interesting, to think of it that way, but biointensive, I tell you, it has blown me away.
And how about your hoop house designs?
Well, our hoop house designs are all about summer growing tomatoes. Mm-hmm. We design and build smart greenhouses, and we are launching this business right now. Our greenhouses run 100% of the time with zero fossil fuel, and it is done with stored water, which is why aquaponics can be a good marriage for one of our smart greenhouses. You can count your fish water, although it's a little different depending on the fish you're growing. But the water is how we live on the planet. If we were on a planet with no oceans, we would be Mars, 300 above zero, 300 below zero. We died every night and every day. But the ocean stabilized the planet, soak up the excess heat that would burn us up and releases it at night. And that's how we can live on this planet. Well, one of the ways. I'm no physicist, so all of you physicists out there, please don't laugh at me. This is basic, simple science of observing the Earth and emulating what the Earth does. And this is how the Earth stabilizes temperatures with water. It is the most efficient thermal mass on Earth, 4 times more efficient than any other thermal mass. And that's why we like to use it. We fill our barrels one time for the rest of their lives, and they sit there and act as batteries. They take the heat out of the way, and they keep circulating because water circulates, so it can take all the heat out of your way. And then as the greenhouse cools off, the heat is released immediately out of the water and chases the cold back across the room, and long before you're going to lose your heat energy out of the water, the sun comes up again. So our biggest test for our greenhouses was 31 below zero, and the tomatoes survived. And that is a tropical plant.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that's what our claim to fame is. And this design, this has been around for a long time. These amazing scientists from the 70s learned this. Bill Yonda's book, The Food and Heat Producing Solar Greenhouse, this old hippie book. They're hippie scientists, man. They got the long mustaches, the curly perms, the little culottes, everything. And they are so smart. They are so right on. And they built all of these greenhouses in the desert Southwest. Then we all went to sleep for 30 years. Now we're awake saying, hey, man, shouldn't there be a technology around that doesn't require us to put fossil fuel into a building that can't hold it?
Right.
It goes and out it goes. As I say in class, it only makes sense if you don't think about it.
Right. Wow.
Yeah, so we figured out a way to store that heat and cool the greenhouses. We use natural convection to move the air. That's low vents and high vents in opposite and equal positioning. The air has to move whether the wind is blowing or not. So I often go into my summer greenhouse in a tower of tomatoes to cool down from the heat of the sun and sit there and let that air move past my hot face. And I tell you, it's how we raised 3 boys, is that I have that sanctuary. We have a very small house and 3 very large boys. And I go there and shut the door and talk to the plants.
Yeah, my greenhouse is my sanctuary. I found my bliss in my greenhouse, and that's why I tried to turn it into a business. That's why I started my aquaponics farm.
Right, because where else could you be happier than surrounded by the things you love like that? If you can turn into your job, it's just like, oh man. I mean, I'm feeling pretty happy with my little self here on my mountain. We never saw this coming. We just started growing. We didn't have running water the first 3 years. We started our first bed immediately. We moved in 3 feet of snow, with everybody telling us we couldn't do it. And if you wait to do everything you're going to do in your life until you're retired or whatever, the stars are aligned, you're going to miss it. So I don't mean to preach. I'm just saying, do it now. Live your dream now. Yeah.
Right. I agree completely. You have to, when you find that thing. I have friends that contact me fairly often wanting advice about starting a small business. I've owned businesses for most of my life. I started my first business when I was a teenager, and I always tell people, find that one thing that you excel at, or the thing that you absolutely love. When you have time to do something, what do you do in your spare time other than watching TV or surfing the internet? But if you've got some kind of hobby or activity that you just fall back upon, that you just do when you can do anything that you want, that's the one thing that you will probably have success in your life. And if you could figure out how to turn that into a business, then you'll have success on multiple levels. And I've seen a lot of my friends do this. Mm-hmm. And so it appears that you and Cord have been on this path for quite some time, where Cord's also a master blacksmith.
Indeed, that's what he's made his living with on this mountain for all these years, which, doing iron art in the woods is not going to make you rich. But we've always told everyone we don't have any money, but we're the richest people we know. And now with the greenhouses, though, have really been taking over. The demand for a smart greenhouse is it's scaring us a little bit. We've had to actually go get some help from the Small Business Association to help us because we're growing too fast. We can't keep up with the demand, which makes my heart feel so good to know that people are actually asking questions about what they're doing or what they're choosing or why we would pump fossil fuel into a building that can't hold it. And these greenhouses they work better than we can ever tell you, and they crank out the food 365 days a year at any elevation. It's really amazing. But this whole lifestyle that we live here, we wanted to develop a piece of land. We wanted to move onto land. We moved onto it raw in January in 3 feet of snow with a camper and a wood stove named Leroy. And that's how you do it. We were 25 years old. We had no money, and we did it anyway. So again, start failing, start making mistakes, dive in, skin your nose, whatever. That's how you learn. If you're not killing plants, you're not trying. If you're not, if you're not failing, then you're not learning. So, and in wild, extreme places, you got to get out there and get to know your environment. Be out in it, and you will understand how it works better by observing it,
Right, and be flexible and adapt between the adaptations of your plants and your own personal adaptations. You can figure it out, and so you're not really fighting Mother Nature. Mother Nature seems to want you to succeed in this endeavor.
I think so, and we've been working along with Mother Nature, being as respectful as we can. We're trying to learn from her and emulate what nature's showing us here. We have these ancient trees here that are 1,000 years old, and they hardly have any water. How do they do it? They teach us, and by observing nature around you, wherever you live, you can make really much better choices to have success in gardening or seed saving or whatever. It's just like with seed saving. If I'm looking for earliness, right? I need a tomato to come on early and strong, so the first tomato is marked as the first early tomato. Now I know that seed is going to give me an early tomato. I didn't save it for flavor. Later I might find one that tasted better. I'll save it for flavor and mark it as the best tasting tomato. Now I'm saving for taste. Well, up here I need earliness, I need cold hardiness. If they make it through something hard, then I'm great because the seed remembers. And I have just that much more time on that seed to give me a stronger crop. But nature does it too. What can stand the hail? What can stand the wind? You look at the plants and you see how they're doing it. I'm planting under the trees because in nature, that's where all the wild lamb's quarter grows, and where the grass grows is under the protection of the trees. So I realized that, and then I find out that the trees also catch the frost. The trees shade from too much sun here in Colorado. The shade, they catch the hail. It's incredible. And then the pine needles mulch my beds. So I don't even have to mulch them. And I love being a part of that,
Right.
I'm honored to be a part of it, actually. It's the earth is outstanding and knows how to do all of these things that we'd have lost faith in and don't think the earth can feed the planet, the population anymore. The earth can feed it over and over and over again. We're just too dumb to realize how.
Yes, exactly.
The lie that was given to us by the biggest money in the world, the biggest money in the world, petrochemicals, oil, gas. We can't fight them, but we can save our own seed and learn how to grow our own food and take control of our backyard before they try to stop you, because they are working on that, wanting people not to be able to grow organic gardens anymore. And when you have adapted seed, that's the thing they're the most threatened by, is adapted seed to your region. So seed swaps, seed libraries, creating networks of people growing seed, it is a kick. I'll tell you, you will get back more seed than you ever imagined. You will stock your pantry with seed for the rest of your life. And seed shelf life, ask the earth how long the shelf life of a weed seed is. Don't listen to a seed company telling you that it dies after a year. These are perfect, living, breathing embryos, and they wait until conditions are perfect. They can last hundreds of years, even thousands of years. So I'm germinating seeds from the 40s, 50s, 60s, and bringing back varieties that are lost. And it is a kick. I got to tell you, you will become addicted to seed saving if you start. Even marigolds, okay? Save your marigold seeds. One head gives you over 250 seeds. So you're set for years to come, and they make great gifts for people in your region.
Huh? Yes, I save seeds, and I have on my second generation of basil, my Thai basil, which I sell to local restaurants, and I have heirloom tobacco. I grow some Havana tobacco, and I'm on my second generation with that, and I'm actually doing that in deep water culture in my aquaponics system right now as an experiment, and it's working pretty well. And I have, I think it's my third generation of coriander growing right now in my aquaponics system.
Isn't that great that you didn't have to go out and buy coriander seed again when the plant loads up with seed?
I go through a lot of Thai basil, and so toward the end of last season, I let that crop go to seed.
Perfect.
Because I usually cut and come again, so I get more of my plants like that. And so I let it go, and then I have my helper come in, and we harvest the seed, and then we replant it, and now the crop's thriving. And
doesn't it feel great? Doesn't it just feel great? Even on that one thing, it's got to make you feel empowered, and I know how it makes me feel to have my own seed. I just feel like king of the world. No, queen of the world, sorry. Kirk's king of the world. Hey, listen, Drew, are you aware, of course, that tobacco kills tomatoes?
Yes, I wanted to get into that with you.
Great.
The mosaic, was it the mosaic tomato virus?
It's the tobacco mosaic virus, and tobacco pretty much carries this disease and will jump it right onto tomatoes. They're from the same family, and they share it. Now, I have read that they share it with peppers and eggplants as well, another nightshade, but I haven't seen it myself, but I've seen it with the tomatoes, and smokers get tackled at my gate, not in an unfriendly way. I just need them to wash their hands before they touch anything in my garden, and I don't let them touch the door jamb of my greenhouse because I'm going to be putting that tobacco right there on my tomato greenhouse. So a lot of people who struggle with tomatoes didn't know it, didn't realize if they have a smoker in their life or they don't wash their hands before they handle the plants.
Yes,
it's a slow, cruel death.
Right. Yeah, people don't think about that at all, and I heard. I don't know, maybe this was just something that stuck in my head from The Simpsons, but they'll cross-pollinate, and you'll get tomacos.
Oh, well, then that'd be fun. If that tomato could survive that, then you'd really have something, wouldn't you? Hey, I'm reading on here really quick what somebody was mentioning about finding their dad's seed set stash, and that's something I want to be sure to say that those old tins of seed that are in somebody's cellar or your grandfather's seed, and he's long passed, or great-grandfather, you dig that seed out, that is precious gold. Not only can they be still absolutely viable, but there may be a lost heirloom in there. There may be one of the heirlooms that the giant, Monsanto's and their friends are buying up and ditching all that regional seed. They don't want us to have that regional seed. So when you find old seed or an old tin, you go through that and you try to germinate some of it. Bring that seed back. And if you don't want it, you can call me and I'll take it. I don't care where you're from. I will revive that seed again. And after you brought seed back from 50 years ago and now it's 1 year fresh, again, the sense of accomplishment, empowerment, whatever you want to call it, wielding the universe really comes down on you and it feels so cool. I have been able to bring back a couple of tomatoes that are no longer with us, and it's a thrill to introduce them to the market again, or just to my peers and my friends, But don't let those old stashes of seed go away. Get them in somewhere. Get them to a grower, to somebody you know, or call somebody that knows something about seed. You'll be amazed at what you could bring back to life.
Penn, you have seed for sale through your website. Is that correct?
I do. I do. It's mostly tomatoes, of course, high-altitude tomatoes, or extreme condition tomatoes, including heat.
Uh-huh. And so, again, that website is pennandcordsgarden.com. Do you guys have a Facebook page?
We don't. We haven't joined the Zuckerberg yet. And, it's that owning my rights to my pictures. I got to learn all that stuff because I'm in the woods hiding. I got my pictures. I'm like, yeah. I don't want to, but we will one day soon. So meanwhile, we're just off our website.
There's lots of information on there, and you have a fantastic blog. And you have your classes and consultations if people are in the area.
That's right.
That's right. You've got a long list of classes that you've done here, and you have some things coming up, it looks like.
Yeah, and we have a tour this fall, the Vegetable Walk of Fame. Folks come to see, because I'll tell you, when there's corn waving at 8,000 feet, then they believe. Otherwise, they don't believe. There's a pumpkin bigger than your head at 8,000 feet, they believe. We're growing this ancient glass gem corn, this famous corn that the whole world wanted, and we had a complete failure last year. And this year, we got it up 3 inches tall, and it's frozen twice on it now. And I'm beside myself. Wow. I'm out there replanting. I'm covering. It's like we're freezing in June, and we're going to freeze again Wednesday.
Oh, boy.
So I'm holding the tomatoes back. That's all I can do, But some other years, it could be 100 degrees in May, and yeah, that's the cool thing about Colorado. You start with a clean slate every year and an open heart.
Uh-huh. I've got it easy. I'm in a warehouse at 2,000 feet.
The climate doesn't change very much in there, huh?
No, I have to create that climate. that has its own challenges. Penn, I really appreciate your coming on the show, and I'd like to have you back again sometime, too.
Great. I would love that. There's lots more to talk about.
We've just touched the tip of the iceberg.
That's right.
I really appreciate it. So let's keep in touch. And again, this was Penn Parmenter. You can find her website at pennandcordsgarden.com, and you can learn about extreme wild mountain gardening and homesteading through their website and their classes. And they also have mountain seeds for sale and sustainable greenhouses. So, Penn, thank you very much. And
thank you.
My next guest is Kirk Mobert. He has been a natural builder for over a decade and has been teaching at Cobb Cottage Company and around California for the last 9 years. He's an instructor at Sundog School of Natural Building, and he teaches natural building workshops, complete cob construction, earthen plasters, earthen ovens, rocket stoves, wood-fired water heaters, earthen floors, living roofs, and more. He has contributed to the definitive book on rocket mass heaters, appropriately titled Rocket Mass Heaters by Iantu Evans and Leslie Jackson, and he has a bulletin board about rocket stoves over at proboards.com. Kirk, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you.
So tell us about Sundog School and the classes that are available over there.
Well, Sundog School of Natural Building, we put it together to to teach courses in natural building, rocket stoves, etc. It's not really just a cob school. It's a natural building school. People sort of identify natural building with cob, but natural building is a lot more than just cob. Anyway, we run courses pretty much all year. We have an apprenticeship program where we teach you how to become a professional natural builder, as well as the 9-day classes that teach you everything you need to know to build a mud hut, and others.
I'd never heard of cob until I started researching rocket stoves and rocket mass heaters. And this term was just, thrown around abundantly in all the material that I could find. What is cob?
Cob is basically adobe, which is clay-rich soil, often sand and straw, and or horse manure and other animal manures. Cob is, like I said, it's basically adobe, but instead of making bricks out of it, you form it up wet, so it becomes a monolithic structure, basically.
So I've seen pictures of these structures, and they reminded me of something off of Star Wars on Planet Tatooine. That kind of the same, kind of natural, smooth shapes, and everything seems kind of rounded, adobe looking. But I wouldn't really say that they look primitive. I mean that they have a beautiful aesthetic to them.
Well, that's the interesting thing. I was taking some notes while I was listening to Dana, and you talked about Devin and her experience. So it was really, really neat there. And I heard the word primitive come up a couple of times. And quite honestly, when we talk about mud huts, the first thing that comes to mind is a primitive, you're living in those primitive conditions. But they're not primitive at all. They're way more comfortable than, say, a concrete building of the same type and form. They're really easy to sculpt into any shape. It's actually cheaper to make a round building out of cob than it is to make a square one. They're stronger that way. They look better that way. They enclose space more completely, more effectively. And there's nothing primitive about dirt floors. It's actually quite sophisticated and far more comfortable than you would expect. Also non-toxic and cheap.
So, is it hard to do this? Do you need substantial building skills, carpentry experience, anything like that?
Carpentry experience is helpful, but no, not really. Mm-hmm. As long as you're willing to build small. Mm-hmm. You can build safely if you build small, and you don't need to get a professional to tell you how to do it. If you want to build anything besides a tiny home, then when you get to the roof, you're going to have to start looking at some real, somebody who knows structure, like a real carpenter.
You get into some engineering issues.
Yeah, but as long as you're willing to build small, we're talking under 120 square foot, you can build it out of twigs and be just fine.
Right. So when you're talking small too, you might be flying under the radar as far as building codes go. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. In some places, like here in Mendocino County, the building code says 120 square foot footprint or smaller doesn't require a building permit. Also, 48 volts DC and less doesn't require a building permit. Oh. And now, new to California, there's a gray water law that one sink or bathtub can be taken to one gray water infiltration pit with no permit as well.
Oh, that's amazing. So I'll have to research the laws where I'm at. I'm in Jackson County in Southern Oregon. You're
in Southern Oregon.
Yeah. So I think as far as permits go in the county, in city could be different, but you're looking at like under 200 square feet, if I recall. Last time I was looking at this, I was preparing to construct a hoop house, and I was reviewing this because I don't like to ask permission to do things, and so sometimes it's in my own best interest just to do things that fall under the law, instead of breaking the law, because I'd be inclined just to do it anyway. So it's good to know these things, and as far as like 48 volts DC, that'd be a pretty good solar power system right there, or wind, or something along those lines. So that's pretty cool right there, when you're trying to figure out how you're going to power your structure. And so I built a small system that's it's a little 12-volt system. I've got 4 100-watt solar panels, and with charge control and a little battery bank, and I use that to power some things in one of my greenhouses. But I would imagine what you could do is you could, if you wanted to construct something like this, you could, if the codes where you're at don't work out very well, you could find another location. What kind of advice can you give as far as siting a cob structure? I would imagine the climate would have a lot to do with the materials you're going to use and what you have available to you.
Yeah, that's true. First, a quick thing on the codes. I don't want to get into codes too deeply, because that's a huge subject, and then I'll end up jumping on my soapbox. My personal feeling is that codes should be for developers, and that people building shelter for themselves should be left alone, and how dare they invade our space?
Yes,
in that respect.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So, having said that, let's jump off that. And for me, I would much rather ask for forgiveness than beg Mother May I in the first place.
Same here, and especially when it comes to something like shelter, a structure that you need to live in. That's a right. All kinds of creatures build their own shelters.
That's right, and our rights are being infringed upon in that respect.
Sure.
So, there are laws against catching water off of roofs, and there are laws against building structure for yourself and shelter for yourself. And I say those are bad laws, and they deserve to be broken early and often.
Right.
So I'd like to get off the subject of permits now, and and on to about siting a cob house. What you got to remember is that cob can handle a lot of sideways-driven rain. It does really well in very rainy climates, as long as you keep its feet out of the water. So you don't build in floodplains, because if a cob ever sits in a puddle, it's going to turn back into mud again. Mm-hmm. And I think they call that a landslide. I wouldn't want to be inside a house that turned into a landslide.
No way.
So cob houses usually have a good roof, which is a good hat, which is a good roof with wide eaves, and a high pair of boots is what they say in England, which is basically a good stone foundation. We use urbanite a lot. I don't know if you know what urbanite is.
No, I'm not familiar with that. I was doing some research on this, and that term kept coming up. It looked like a stone-like material.
It's basically broken concrete. It's a sidewalk.
Oh, okay. You're just recycled concrete.
Yeah, recycled, repurposed concrete. There are cities all over the place that are trying to comply with the new ADA rules, and in doing so, they have to tear up all of the sidewalks. And there's every patio that's ever been removed is out laying in the middle of a field somewhere.
Yeah.
And people are really happy to see the stuff go away. And if you're careful with it, it doesn't look too objectionable. It can actually be made to look pretty good. Mm-hmm. If you go to our website and you look at the website, you'll notice that the foundations of every single building is dry stacked concrete chunk, broken sidewalk, and it's not too objectionable.
Right. No, I was looking at those pictures, and the structures look very attractive. They look comfortable.
Oh, very much. They are comfortable. So back to siting a cob house, you want to think about passive solar design. You get the feet out of the wet, and then you think about passive solar. because cob is very high in thermal mass. I wouldn't say it's very insulative. I know it's got some insulation value to it, but it is actually thermal mass, and I ignore any insulation that it might have. I build them to accept the sun and store that heat, and then pass it into the house slowly. It's a completely different design technique or design paradigm, I should say, from your standard super insulated house. Like a straw bale house, what they're doing is you're heating up air, and you're storing it inside of an insulated jacket. Air is about the worst thing that you could use to store heat with. It's convenient for piping heat around. You can pump it into different rooms if you have a central heating unit or something like that. But as far as storing heat, air is actually insulation, not thermal mass.
Right.
And so it's probably the least efficient thing you could store heat in. What's more efficient is more heavy materials like stone, water, cob. I object to water personally. I know a lot of people will say, "Oh, well, water. We store heat in water." If you are already doing a big hydroponic system or an aquaponic system, then you're dealing with water anyway. Fine.
Right.
But if you're not, it's actually probably one of the worst storage mediums for heat. Second worst, only to air. Only because it's such a pain in the butt. It wants to get out of whatever you stick it in.
It's heavy.
It's heavy. Well, heavy is helpful. That's what thermal mass is all about. It's heavy. Any heavy material will store heat. But water is more than just heavy. You got to keep it in something, and half of what you keep it in is gonna rust or go south in some way, and the other half is toxic plastic junk.
Right.
Whatever you keep it in, give it enough time, it will find a way out. So, it's a maintenance and upkeep issue. Also, life loves being in water, especially if you're going to warm the stuff up.
Yes.
It just loves being in there. So unless you've got a living system in there, what you've got instead is a tank of sludge that needs cleaning out.
Right. You're going to get algae growth.
Yep, you're going to get algae growth. Also, say for rocket stoves, a lot of people say, "Oh, well, I'll just use a rocket stove and I'll heat up a bunch of water and I'll store it." If you have a particular use where you need to pipe that water around, or once again, if you're using an aquaponic system, that makes a lot of sense. But one thing about water storage is that it cannot be taken, that water can't be heated up beyond 212 degrees Fahrenheit, because if it does, it becomes a bomb. It becomes very dangerous.
Right.
So if you're storing, if you have a storage tank, if it ever gets above 212 degrees Fahrenheit, it'll explode. Or it'll blow the safety valves.
Right.
Which means that you can't actually store that much heat in a given volume of water, compared to, say, a volume of cob. A volume of cob, you can get up to 1,000 degrees Fahrenheit, 2,500 degrees Fahrenheit before it starts becoming a problem. In which case, it starts turning into lava, and then you got to deal with lava.
Right.
But that's not very likely in a storage situation.
Sure.
Now, the interior parts of a rocket stove will get up to that temperature, no problem. But that's in a space about 1 foot tall by 6 inches across. It's a little tiny space that's intensely hot. But everything outside of that is reasonable. 800 degrees and minus. So you can actually stick more heat in a 1 foot by 1 foot square of cob than you can in a 1 foot by 1 foot square of water.
Incredible.
Or a cube.
Right. So just the cob structure in and of itself is more efficient than most modern construction. Because modern insulation is usually based upon trapping pockets of air.
Right. And so they trap pockets of air in between, in between the studs of your house in order to trap a larger pocket of warmed air inside your house.
Yes.
And the problem is that these buildings are super airtight to keep that heated air inside.
Yes.
Which creates sick house syndrome. It makes you sick.
Yeah.
is you need to exchange the air with the outside world in order to get new oxygen and fresh air into the house so you don't die or get sick. So it's really kind of an upside down and backwards methodology for storing heat. So with cob or some kind of heavy duty thermal mass, you pipe the heat into the mass, and then it takes a much longer time to work. It takes a very long time to work its way through that thermal mass. So, say for instance, a rocket stove, which is intended to heat up some kind of a thermal mass, benches are very often done, so you could sit on them.
Yes,
but that's not the only solution. Anyway.
So let's
good fire.
Go ahead.
One good fire, and you're heating for 24 hours.
So let's get into rocket stoves and rocket mass heaters. Explain to our listeners what a rocket stove is.
The functional part of a rocket stove is essentially an internal chimney that's highly insulated. It's internal to the stove. And that insulation, what it does is it traps the heat of the fire inside with the smoke, with the burnable fuel, and it makes it intense enough to burn off all the fuel. So we have to step back a little bit and talk about combustion. When wood burns, really what happens is when you heat up wood gas comes off. And wood gas is a huge range of burnable materials. Wood gas is also called smoke, incidentally, which is made up of a whole range of burnable materials that their combustibility, the heat that they require to burn completely, ranges from about 451 degrees Fahrenheit all the way up to about 1100 degrees Fahrenheit. So in order to burn all the smoke that a piece of wood gives off, you have to get the internal temperature up to about 1100 degrees Fahrenheit or better. Right?
Right.
So what a rocket stove does is it traps the oxygen that is coming in from the air intake and the wood gas, the burning wood, into a very, very, very hot chimney, long enough to burn that completely before it dumps that heat off into whatever you're going to do with your rocket stove. Like cooking or heating water or dumping into a thermal mass for storage, right? So the original rocket stove was purely a cooking device. That's the Approvecho-style rocket stove. That's most prevalent when you think rocket stove. When most people think rocket stoves, they think those little cooking devices that you can make out of tin cans and stuff.
Yes.
Right, they're ubiquitous. You see them everywhere. They're related to the old Fox stove, or the Bengali pit stove, which is basically a hole in the ground. Right?
Yes, I've seen that in my SAS survival manual.
Yeah, you bet. I bet Devin is making them in his backyard.
Yes, so, exactly. Yeah.
From there it goes on. You know, there's other ways of feeding the fire besides the horizontal feed unit that those old Approvecho stoves used. There's a downdraft burners. There's some new stuff on the horizon that's not in the books that's coming out. It's called a batch box burner, which is a lot more like a traditional wood stove in terms of how you feed it. Anyway, did I answer your question?
Yes. Now, this takes us back to the cob, because so you're storing. If you want to store all that heat energy, you're going to basically add something on to the rocket stove, and you're going to make a rocket mass heater. So you're going to have this mass, which is cob, that is built over the flue, which isn't a vertical flue. It's a horizontal flue. Is that correct? Am I describing this right?
Yeah. The classic one is a horizontal flue where the let's call it the burn products, because it's no longer smoke. A good working rocket stove doesn't smoke at all. Anyway, it goes horizontally through a bench, classically, that you can sit on. So your pipes will go, there'll be an internal chimney in the stove, and it'll hit usually a 55-gallon drum or barrel, which is turned upside down. and then the exhaust gases will go, excuse me, down the barrel and be regathered up into a bench. And they'll run through a pipe inside a horizontal bench that you can sit on before it reaches the chimney and goes out. And the cob really is just a convenient, sculptable material that's good thermal mass. And you can sculpt it into any shape, So any shape you can imagine you can make with the stuff. It's just clay. It's dirt.
Right. And they're very elegant, especially when they're incorporated into a cob structure. They just look like they're part of the structure. It just blends in.
Well, they are.
Yeah.
I mean, I love building, internal dividing walls as thermal mass, for one of these stoves. Then the whole wall heats up, right? The whole wall heats up, and you get heat on both sides of the wall. Right.
What kind of wood works best in these stoves?
It'll burn anything. Wood has about 6,000 BTUs of available heat per pound of wood. So the heavier your wood source, something good and heavy like madrone or manzanita, is going to give you more heat per unit volume, because the feed boxes on stoves are pretty small. So you can only get so much in there. But, honestly, these things can burn just about any kind of wood you can throw at them. People try to avoid burning pine because of all the soot and all the pitch.
Yeah.
And creosote issues.
Yeah.
Rocket stoves, they don't have a creosote issue.
Oh.
Because it gets up to 1,100 degrees inside the stove. If you provide enough heat, that's right, it incinerates all of that stuff. So all the pitch in the pine will become fuel and heat.
Incredible. Is it difficult to retrofit a rocket mass heater into an existing structure, like a modern structure? Is
not too difficult.
Thank you, Kirk Mobert of Sundog Builders. We are drawing near the end of the show. You've been listening to Off Grid Journey on ucy.tv. You can find us on the web at ucy.tv/OGJ, facebook.com/offgridjourney, and at offgridjourney.com. Tune in next week at 11 p.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. Thank you for listening. Welcome to Off Grid Journey on ucy.tv, a jam-packed show for you today. I'm your host, Drew. Today we're going to explore wild and extreme